this thing ain't working out. I think we need a new direction.
Welcome to my Q&A series where I answer some of your burning questions. My name is Bree. I am a full-time outdoor adventure and travel content creator living in a van with my dog. I'm also an Air Force veteran, founder of The Roaming Vet, a community of over 60,000 veteran service members and dependents to connect outdoors and travel together. This specific Q&A video is all about my time in the military. Enjoy. I am currently in Thailand getting ready to host 2 group trips for the Roaming Vet community, which is a community for service members, veterans, and dependents to connect outdoors and travel together. I feel like this is a good segue into this Q&A topic because I will be talking about my time in the military. I got a ton of questions that were military related, which I always find surprising. People are always so curious about what it was like. Sam, one of my best friends, is also here. She's getting ready next to me, so do you want to say hi? Anyway, I would love to just get into this because we still have to pack and get ready to leave our hostel to head to Chiang Mai for group trip number 1. Question number 1. What a day in your life looked like in the Air Force. I feel like everyone's day looks differently when they're in the military. For me, it really depended on what I was doing as well. So like if I was at my home base in Alaska, which is where I was stationed for 3 years, for the first 3 years specifically that I was in the military after all my training, I worked 12s and mostly mid shifts. So I would work at night for most of my career. And in Alaska, there's a season where it's dark, literally 24/7. So I pretty much never saw the sun. And yes, I did struggle with seasonal depression, but usually I would wake up however freaking late or early depending on the schedule, get ready for work. I was security forces in the Air Force for I think the first 4 years that I was in before I became an executive assistant, which I'll get into that. But you always had to make sure that you didn't forget your gear, like your plate carrier, your holster, and things like that. And then I would go into my squadron. We would do guard mount, which is where you basically get your brief from the previous shift. So it's like if anything happened, anything that we have coming up for that shift, and then we would go to post. And you worked at a different post every day. This would look basically the same when I got stationed at Fairchild in Washington, except I wasn't working 12s, so pretty much same thing. Where you would be posted was dependent on what your current status was in training. So it really just varied, but I did go on to become an executive assistant at the mission support group where I did admin stuff, which was really cool. I learned so many things. And then I made staff sergeant, went to ALS, which is Airman Leadership School, and I was selected to be the executive assistant for the command chief. And those schedules always look different as well. I also very much have always and will always prioritize fitness. So every single day I was doing some form of exercise, whether that was the gym, going on walks, like it doesn't matter, runs. That's pretty much what my schedule looked like. Depending on what squadron I was in too, we would have group PT and stuff like that. So like depending on your job, AFSC code, or for other branches, it's not called an AFSC code. It's dependent on what branch you're in, but a lot of people will start their day with group PT. How did you begin your journey from active duty to where you are now? I am a full-time outdoor adventure and travel content creator. I'm also the founder of The Roaming Vet, which I talked about. This journey was a long one. When I first joined the Air Force and got to my first duty station, I was very, very adamant about doing my upgrade training. I was studying all the time and I was really on my A game until I wasn't. I somehow became a little bit of a dirtbag airman, mostly just like distracted by being a young person in my late teens, early 20s. I really kind of fell off the bandwagon a little bit of like career goals and direction. Like I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I also got married and divorced, but yes, I did not come out of the military unscathed. So when I was stationed in Alaska, I had just gotten home from work and I got a random phone call. Ring, ring. I answer. And somebody on the other line says, Bree, pack your bags. You're leaving in 2 days to deploy and we're not telling you where. I laughed. I started laughing. I thought they were joking. I don't know what I thought would happen when I got a deployment notification, but that definitely wasn't it. I just started laughing and he's like, no, I'm serious. And at this point in my life, my marriage was suffering. Shocker. Things are amicable now. Like we're good. But I was deploying knowing that like I had some issues going on at home, and I already knew that was going to be hard. Ended up deploying, that ended up being really challenging on its own, just for obvious reasons, and also because of my at-home life. And then while I was there, my stepbrother passed by suicide, so I was just like all around straight up not having a good time. I was crying all the time. I was sad. I ended up having to go home 2 weeks earlier than everyone else because I was going to my stepbrother's funeral, which was such a weird experience because I was like excited to get home, but also like mourning. His name is Bryce. I was also mourning him and like my family dynamics, and like it was just an all around weird, very transformative season of my life. When I got back to Alaska at my home station, I ended up volunteering to be a JROTC camp counselor, mentor, and like trainer for their summer camp, which ended up being also a very transformative experience. I met this pilot who is the officer basically in charge of the whole thing. He ended up having like such a monumental, indirect, subconscious impact on me for me to realize like I did not want to be, I say dirtbag, like I wasn't necessarily doing anything wrong, I just wasn't necessarily doing anything right or like super life-changing in my career. Like I was just lacking direction and motivation altogether. And he actually ended up inspiring me because before I joined the Air Force, wanted to be a pilot. I had done a flight lesson, and then I just joined the Air Force and enlisted. You have to be a commissioned officer to be a pilot, but this ended up like basically getting me back on track, and I decided to go back to school. I ended up getting my CCAF associate's degree in criminal justice, and then I got my bachelor's degree with high honors in social and criminal justice. And then I was like, I'm gonna go get flying hours so I can go commission and fly. And what had happened on my deployment was I ended up getting injured. There's no climatic story to it. It's not anything crazy. I ended up just getting hurt, and later on, when I was wanting to commission and fly, I had to do a medical evaluation, and they identified this like ongoing issue that I've had and sending me to physical therapy, which caused the issue to be worse. And so I ended up having to have surgery. The first surgery was unsuccessful. I ended up having a second surgery. I still have issues with my hip. I have chronic pain from it, but I ended up getting disqualified from commissioning and flying. I ended up getting disqualified from my AFSC, and this was all happening while I was at Fairchild Air Force Base when I was going through this medical stuff. And I basically requested to extend my contract so that I could fully recover and basically go from there. But I was denied because COVID, and they were like pushing everyone to get out. So they said no, and then the med group said that they wouldn't med board me because I needed more time for post-medical care, but I didn't have enough time on my contract. So I ended up getting just outright medically separated at my date of separation, which was just crazy. Honestly, it was crazy. It sucked too because prior to getting medically separated, I was like my peak in my career because I just decided I was gonna be that girl. Like I just decided I was going to be successful. I was going to be good at my job, and I was. I got several awards and recognition. I was Airman of the Year at my squadron group and wing, which is like one of the highest awards you can get. I'm gonna insert a round of applause there. Quarterly awards, like I was just doing really, really well. And then everything came crashing down. I ended up getting medically separated at my date of separation. I did a legal internship with Sam actually in Kansas, and I worked at a ranch as a farmhand because I just thought that would be a fun job to figure out what the heck I wanted to do. And I discovered that I didn't want to work in the legal field anymore, or at least that specific field. And then I started a Master of Legal Studies, decided to quit that, started working at Veterans Lending Group, which I love them. I still work with them on a partnership basis. It's a mortgage lending group. I was a transaction coordinator. While I loved the people I was working with, my anxiety and PTSD and things I was struggling with were at an all-time high. Well, I wasn't doing that great, and so I just decided I'm gonna quit. At this time, I was still dating a guy that I was dating when I was active duty. After he got picked up to commission and fly, I ended up like moving with him to New York. That relationship literally was never going well to begin with. And this is where I decided to get into outdoor content creation. I was like, if there's going to be something that I want to do, it has to be in a hobby and in something that I'm passionate about. And this time was lacking passion and purpose altogether. So I was like, I'll just start there. So that's what I did. I ended up eventually breaking up with my then boyfriend, moving into my Subaru that I converted, and hitting the road. I hit the road. I wasn't working. I was just convinced I was going to be a content creator. And one thing about me is when I put my mind to something, I'm going to do it. I hyperfixate like nobody's business. The roaming vet was an idea and it was up and running in like 72 hours. I am not kidding when I say I hyperfixate. So that's how I started, and it was really just like lacking anything, lacking motivation, lacking drive, lacking direction, and I was like, this is what I'm gonna do. I think this is a good segue into the next question, which is, how do you transition from your military identity and your personal values identity? I think this question is asking about finding yourself outside of the military. Here's the thing, this is a trap that a lot of people fall into, and it happened to me, and it happened to a lot of people that I saw, is that they join the military at a very, very young age. And so their entire early adulthood is developed in the military, and so that becomes their entire personality. You don't know anything else outside of the military. You're basically like, it's ingrained in you to be the military. I don't know how else to explain it. And so your identity as a human being and as yourself is fully dependent on the military. It's dependent on being in the military, and so the transition out of it is very, very hard. That transition for people, regardless of their military experience, is really hard because your entire adulthood, your early development, your personality, and your identity is made in the military. And so when you get out, it's really hard to figure out who you are as an adult outside of it. And I think for some people, they have like the knowledge, especially people who join later in their life, have the knowledge of who they are, or that they need to have an identity outside of the military, but a lot of people just unfortunately don't, and I didn't either, because I didn't know who I was outside of it. And I think part of it is being aware of your hobbies, and I feel like you'll find yourself and your personal identity and your personal values through your hobbies and through making friends outside of the military. Make friends outside of the military. Your friends do not need to be your coworkers. They don't need to be the people you spend your personal time with. They can be people that have nothing to fucking do with the military. And it's not hating on other people in the military or saying like don't associate with them. It's really just like you want to be so intentional about who you surround yourself with and making sure that you are able to develop an identity outside of it. If that answers that question, I hope I got the interpretation of that right. Next question is, how was your transition from the military to civilian life? It was brutal. Single-handedly one of the most humbling experiences of my life. While I became an outdoor adventure and travel content creator, I was connecting with people who had mutual interests, which was amazing and honestly really, really helpful. But I still felt like I wasn't able to connect with them over shared experiences, and one of those things being the transition out of the military. That season was so hard for me because I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I felt ill-prepared, and not to mention like breaking up with my ex and moving into my Subaru. Those were all things that led me where I am now, and I'm really grateful for them. And it was just really hard, so that's why I actually created the Roaming Vet, was because I discovered that I wasn't the only person that struggled with that transition out of the military. Other people had to be struggling as well. I posted about it a couple of times. Those videos did really well. Figured out that I wasn't the only one feeling that way, and that I could connect with people who felt that way and also liked the outdoors. So that's what I did. But initially it was really hard. The first 2 years sucked. The next question is, some physically active disabled vets are having a hard time keeping their VA disability. Any advice? I am not an expert at this. I have no idea. I have not heard about that until I got this question. I think my only advice to people who have a disability rating but are not 100% PNT is to continue receiving care. I have heard that people who don't continue to receive care will get their disability taken away. It's hard because I travel full time, so like even physical therapy that I know I need is borderline impossible for me to get because I travel full time for work. But have received therapy for a while now since I left the Air Force. That's the only advice I can give. I'm not an expert in VA disability, so I wish I had a better answer. This wraps up my military related Q&A. This was a really quick one. I hope it gives you some insight into my life when I was in the military. I often reflect on it and I'm like, wow, I did some really cool things. I learned so much. I loved the military. I definitely struggled with certain aspects, but I feel like I had such a peak in my life in the military and I actually really did enjoy it. So next up on my Q&A series, I'll be talking about van life, content creation and photography, my adventure pup Chandler, what it really looks like to travel with a dog, especially living in a van. If you want to keep learning a little bit more about me as I segue into driving the Pan American Highway from Alaska to Argentina, please like, subscribe, interact, leave comments, questions. I hope to see you at the next video. Okay, bye. I'm talking really fast. It's okay. Yes, more strict.